Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Pack Unleashed. I am John, and I'm with my co-hosts Matt and Dom. So what is Pack Unleashed, guys? What are we going to be talking about?
Oh, I see what you did there, John.
Genius.
I see what you did there.
Genius.
That was that. Oh, they don't call him the smart one for nothing, ladies and gentlemen. So I think, I got the intro. Here you go, guys. So since John has bravely bowed out of this one, I'll jump in quickly. I think that we've got together very recently to form the Pack, which is us all coming together to help change the way people work and empower people to innovate products and services and build successful teams. And our whole kind of tagline is better together. So by all three of us getting together, we've qualified that. And the podcast really is a chance for us to have a little bit of fun, have a chat, have a talk about some design related things, some life related things. And also just a chance for us to sort of talk about some of the things that we're interested in and hopefully share it with maybe one or two people that will potentially listen to this.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess just to sort of set the scene, as Matt said, we've recently formed Pack, and we were gunning up to kind of launch at the end of March, and then this little pandemic situation kicked off. But it's been a really interesting first month for us so far, in as much as we've started a video series on LinkedIn. We've accelerated getting our website up, and we've done lots of quite productive things. And I was saying to the guys earlier, before we kind of started recording, that I'm not sure we would have got all that done if we hadn't have been in this new normal that we're in currently. So it's really kind of helped to push us forward with things as well. And one of those things that we realized early on is that we really missed being around people, talking to people. So one of the first ideas that we had was that we should have a chat with people and just see what's going on. No agenda, but just kind of see how the situation is for them and what insights we could learn from that. So we started a series of videos that we've been putting out on LinkedIn called The New Normal, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. So going forward for future episodes, we're going to be talking about collaboration, product and service design thinking, all of those good things. We'll probably be talking about an awful lot of 80s film references as well, because that just comes as standard with us guys. And also, I think there'll be a hefty chunk of sourdough bread making advice as well from Matt as well. So if that's not enough to keep you
sourdough in. Yes.
And let the sourdough in. So if you like any of those things, or not, just do us a favor, subscribe. because
it's going to get a bit embarrassing when John's mum's our only subscriber. Hi, John's mum, by the way. Hi, John. I know you'll be listening.
Just the mum. She's my biggest fan. She's. I'm sorry, I'm talking about. You set me off about my mum now. I love you, mum. Hi, mum. We'll also be talking about.
It gets better, guys. So what are we going to talk about today for our first ever episode, the forgotten episode, some might say?
Well, I think as John just alluded to there, I think we should probably talk about the new normal, seeing as that is something that has been very much at the forefront of our, the last few weeks. And as John said, it's just been, really interesting, I think, to just talk to a lot of different people who are obviously going through this. It's something we're going through together. Everyone will be tackling it slightly differently. And, in a time like this where we can't actually be with people, which for us is quite difficult, obviously, because that's a big part of what we do. And obviously why we started Pack, it was very much about working with other people and helping teams to suddenly be in this sort of isolated state we're all in now. So, perhaps we should kick off with how we found that, and perhaps talk a little bit about who we've spoken to, maybe.
Yeah,
I think there's been some very interesting conversations being had.
some very interesting conversations. It's been really insightful, and I think one of the things that we that we said from the beginning was that we're not just interested in talking to other product people, other UX people, etc., etc. We really want to get the big picture from everyone. So, we've spoken to everyone from Matt's personal trainer to to friends that we know who are young professionals, and right through to people who work in kind of comms and media, authors, all sorts of people from all walks of life. And it's been really interesting. So yeah, what drove us to start it, I guess, is we just wanted to know more about what's going on and come out of our own bubble, I guess. Would you guys say that was correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think for a lot of people as well, working in this kind of environment is very different. Certainly when people are used to working as part of big teams, and so I think from that perspective, it's just been really interesting to just kind of talk to people and just see how they're coping, what they're up to. Like you said just before, like how are people actually adapting, and has it changed the way that they work and just their everyday lives? Because obviously working from home is very different from being in an office or a kind of day-to-day job, because you've got lots of other things to think about. If you've got a young family or that type of stuff, you've suddenly your world is completely flipped upside down.
I think for me that the human part was the most interesting part of it. I mean, like, we just got to a point where we'd basically kicked off on launching this business, and invested time and money in it, and all of a sudden, basically over the space of about 5 days, went from, right, this is what we're doing, and me personally, to being, well, now I've got no income, and we can't get together and do things in the way that we plan to do them.
Yeah.
And
the last video we recorded together was an in-person video, wasn't it, where we kind of met up right on the cusp of lockdown, and then we, it felt.
And we had to. Do you remember we had to edit it?
We had to edit it, yeah, because it was a tricky one. It was a really sensitive time, and it still is, obviously. And just the fact that we recorded that video sat next to each other in an office was, suddenly within a couple of days of editing it and recording it was a really weird thing, and it seemed inappropriate. So
the Corona high five at the end, we definitely had to get.
Yeah, we had to do away with the Corona high five. Thought we weren't going to mention that.
Well, this is the unleashed part, right? So we can talk about all this stuff. And there was a slightly amazingly well produced and amazingly well graphically titled bit to do with Dom not being in the office.
Dom cannot be with us today.
We thought that although we really enjoyed it, it might be slightly insensitive to what's going on.
Well, I guess for me that was actually, I was actually ill, and it was a real shame, because obviously I really wanted to be in on that video, but I obviously did come down with Corona-like symptoms, so I was completely wiped out for.
So still to be confirmed whether you actually had it, but that's one thing to point out. We were kind of first-hand affected in that way, that one of the team came down with a suspected case of Corona as well. But yeah, we were going to be launching PAC as part of an innovation conference, VentureFest South, on the 27th of March. And we booked the Airbnb, we'd got a slot. We were going to be doing our Karate Kid design thinking workshop. We had the headbands ready, we polished the gong, we were
chosen the film for the night before. I mean, like, we were ready to rock.
We were pumped. So pumped, and overnight it got taken away. So this is the story of how we lost our launch, we lost the big fanfare of our launch, but we gained so much more, I feel, in the last month. And personally, I've really loved what we've been up to, and it's just something I don't think would have come about had we not been in this situation.
It's made me realise, actually, that I don't think I want to work in person with either of you.
What? Oh no!
I like that. We're going to have to cross out the tagline now, aren't we? Better together, apart from the fact that not being together actually means we get done.
Yeah,
so.
we do get more done.
Better apart, I think.
Better apart, yeah. I can mute you guys whenever I don't want to talk to you, which is great. Or vice versa. Yeah, so it's been really interesting. So I guess one thing that's been interesting is how people have responded to this. So I was listening to a podcast. I don't mean to plug another podcast so early on in creating our own podcast.
Oh man, like literally our free listeners just
go and
logged
listen.
off now to
Go and listen
search
to this
for-
other
yeah.
podcast. No, there's a great podcast called How to Fail, and it's by Elizabeth Day, and she speaks to someone. I can't pronounce his second name fully. I'll give it a go. Mo Gordat, and he's basically an author.
Sorry, Mo.
You
Sorry, Mo.
you sounded a bit like Ron Burgundy.
Mo Gordat. No, he's an author, and he's got a really interesting story, and I'm not going to give it away, but it's episode 68 of the How to Fail podcast, and he talks a lot about the illusion of control and how in control we feel like we are, most of the time up until the last few weeks or the last 6-7 weeks, and how the illusion of control is the enemy basically, and how we think we've got it all licked, and we think that we know what's going to happen, and we think that we can control the outputs of stuff, and then suddenly, as we've all seen overnight, it's all been taken away. And I certainly myself feel very different to how I felt a month ago or 5 weeks ago, because I just feel like it's that letting go of that control and just kind of rolling with it. And speaking to other people has really helped with that as well. It's been really interesting to hear how different people have reacted, and how they've coped with that change, and how they've coped with that loss of control and made a peace with it as well.
The people we've spoken to realize as well that it's not just them, and that they're not alone, and that obviously other people are feeling the same way.
Yeah,
obviously
exactly.
everyone is in this situation, and everyone's going to react to it and behave slightly differently.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might think, oh, I'm not doing the right thing, or you look, some of the people I spoke to was, they were sort of seeing a lot of what was happening on social, and then suddenly feeling like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I need to be doing more. I need to be jumping on this. I need to be doing that, and feeling pressure, upon themselves to suddenly start being like, immediately reacting to everything. And that just isn't the case, really.
Exactly. And I think you're completely right. There's this, it's bad enough anyway when we're not in this situation to look at social media and think that you're not good enough, that you're not doing as much as other people are doing, and that you're, comparing yourself, let alone when we've got all kinds of news coming out all the time, doom and gloom. You might know people personally affected by it, people who are their jobs are precarious, or people who are affected health-wise by it as well. So it's been a really anxious time. So yeah, that's one of the things that really drove us to share people's stories, was to, in some way, hopefully bring about a little bit of comfort to people as well, and a little bit of comfort to ourselves. I think just that, other people are out there, that they've got stories to tell, and it's certainly made me feel a little bit more calm about it doing this series. And it's just really interesting. And as you say, we are kind of in it together, but it's extremely easy to become siloed into your own head, into your own thoughts, and I know definitely kind of early on, a few weeks ago, I just didn't want to be in a situation where I had too long, with my thoughts, and had too long to think about things, because it was so uncertain. It's kind of like a kind of bad situation, where you don't want to listen to yourself too much. So I was trying to keep myself constantly distracted, and the two young children I've got running around the house definitely helped.
Oh yeah, kids make it awesome. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, it must be difficult for you as well, obviously, because you've got 3 kids, haven't you? So it's
You've got
so
2 kids and a baby.
I've got 2 kids and a baby, so I've got 3 small
humans
entities in this house under the age of 6. So 6 years, 4 years, and 6 months, and it's been pretty full on and relentless. It's it's been a big adjustment, but I think it going back to what you were saying, John. I think it is that what you take away from this is the level of adjustment that everybody is capable of, that they don't think they're capable of. You know, from a personal point of view, I think, you know, within the family, obviously there's been some very stressful times and adjustments being made that, you know, have been hard. And the first couple of weeks, you know, there were a lot of tears in the house and, you know, people very worried. And I think what's interesting from doing this series of recordings with other people is seeing how the tones changed over that kind of, because it's quite an interesting timeline, because obviously we did them like 1 or 2 a week as we went through. So the initial 2 people that we kind of talked to, it was all kind of like, wow, this is like, it was like the week that lockdown had started and everyone was like, oh God, what's going on? This doesn't even feel real. I've just woken up 27 days later. And and then, and as you kind of go through, I think the tone of people obviously sort of changes. And you know, we spoke to some people that have launched products or completely changed the way that they deal with events. And I think that for me was the most interesting takeaway from it all, is this kind of human resilience that, you know, the adeptly named new normal becomes very normal very quickly, and people tend to kind of relax. Like Don was saying, and you were saying, there's so many negative news stories out there because it's so easy to fixate on the stuff that's different and hard and stands out. And actually, the amount of people that have picked up new stuff. I was on a Zoom meeting the other day with it was like my parents-in-law's quiz for their church, and we got invited
that sounds
to
fun.
it. So it was awesome. It was like
it's got that bad, is it?
Man. Oh, that's where I'm at. Like, that's Friday night. That's like, that's the equivalent of going to Tiger these days for me. And we were on there, and there was like this 90-year-old lady sat on this kind of Zoom chat, and you know,
it was cool.
It's just all this kind of like stuff where people sometimes need a change to make them change.
Absolutely, yeah. This is it's interesting actually, and this is one of the things, you know, that I spoke to a couple of our guests about, which was, you know, what a catalyst it's been for change. So, you know, on that same tip, I've been involved in organising a virtual festival for my kind of area in Brighton and surrounding streets and stuff. And, you know, within 2 days, we whipped up a website. We had, you know, we had a schedule of people that were all doing stuff. And suddenly all of these people that probably never would have interacted together, you know, we're all sharing ideas, and we had, you know, similar thing. People who had never used this technology before were suddenly doing stuff to entertain everyone. And it's really, really interesting to see how people come together and how quickly you can actually adapt.
I think as humans, we're very resilient, aren't we? You kind of, you know, very quickly, it's like learn and adapt. And, you know, because there is just no other choice really.
Yeah.
So, you know, you either do that or you know, whatever, crawl away and
Did that festival happen yet, John?
Yes, it was a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a call later on because we're going to be doing another one as well. So it's going to become a regular thing, and it's just been a real lifeline actually for a lot of people around here. And I know other people as well who are pivoting their businesses and putting the profits and stuff like that into more charities and just generally just, you know, pulling out all the stops with that sort of thing. So it's been really, really interesting. Should we have a chat through some of the people that we spoke to and some of the kind of insights that we gained from them? And
maybe it'd be nice to find out everyone's favorite bits.
Everyone's favorite bits, yeah.
Everyone's favorite bits. We could do a little segment. Everybody's favorite bits.
Ooh.
What was your favorite bit, John?
Everybody's favorite bits.
Ooh.
Hello.
Whoa. Yeah, we need some kind of a bit in there, don't we?
I think my favourite bits of the series were around kind of lasting change and what people have learned in the last few weeks in quite a short space of time that they feel like they're going to take forward. So a lot of people said, you know, that they were enjoying talking to people more and that they, you know, wouldn't rely on stuff like social media and email and that sort of thing, and are going to make more of an effort to do stuff like picking up the phone or do stuff like virtual Zoom calls and that kind of thing. So I think suddenly everyone's a little bit more comfortable being on video and is going to stop shying away from it, which is which is a really interesting kind of turn of events.
That's a good point to make, actually, because, you know, obviously a lot of people do kind of shy away from being on camera.
We're getting our 10,000 hours in, aren't we, at the moment, whereby we'll all be experts. So,
well, yeah, exactly.
So that was really interesting. And as you mentioned earlier, Matt, about people launching products in this or launching new ideas in the current climate, which was really interesting. So I had a chat with a guy called Avi Millman, who is he's launched his own sort of digital product a while ago, and then just before Corona, he was working at InVision software company. And just kind of handed his notice in and was about to go traveling and had all these plans, and then suddenly got completely taken away. But I think it's really interesting because that's a great example of someone who has kind of pivoted on what they were setting out to do and has spotted opportunities and taken that forward and made something new out of it. So he basically created a language learning platform for people specifically affected by coronavirus to connect with each other. And it's genius because the barriers are so low to people just being able to chat with each other. That's like, there's no real skill in that. You know, you just, anyone can do that. They can talk their native language. And that's really interesting. So he kind of took that from idea to having something that people could sign up for and start talking to each other within a couple of weeks. And some of the insights that he kind of dropped specifically around launching a new idea in this current climate is that people are a lot more forgiving, which was really interesting. So he was like, look, the user experience needs loads of work. You know, we're using Google Forms, we're doing this, that, and the other. It's all kind of sellotaped together at the moment, but you know, people are a lot more understanding and a lot more forgiving, and there's a lot more kind of empathy floating around than there used to be.
Definitely, it's that whole kind of lean startup model, and you know, that's something. It's a great model. It's a great book as well, and that's when I spoke to Toby about that, he kind of brought that up.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, he whipped it out, didn't he, from the bookshelf during your chat?
Yeah, he just. But again, you know, that's a great book, and I remember when I first read that book, I was like, wow, there's so many great things in here that would be really valuable to starting a new product.
Yeah.
But then it's one of those things that somehow along the way you kind of forget, and then you sort of move back into this way of thinking, oh, everything needs to be perfect, and actually it doesn't. Certainly not to get some kind of a like MVP out.
No, that's it. And you know, his advice was, you know, if I was talking to someone who wasn't in this situation and if everything was normal, I would say, well, you just take a few more weeks to, you know, get your ducks in a row and do your research and, you know, do all these processes that we normally do. But actually the stories of people reacting in a lightning way and doing stuff, you know, super quick and adapting and pivoting their offering has been really, really interesting to hear about. So another couple of examples, obviously, Alex, the PT who went from an in-person trainer to, you know, online positivity PT sensation, you know, and I love that, and I loved his. Yeah, the Yeti. He's a great guy and it's a great watch. And he basically, I've used his kind of, he had a great analogy of the two paths that you can take, one of which is the kind of dark path where you're like, oh, you know, pessimistic, etc. And then the one which is like, okay, this is the kind of positive. And I've definitely used that with my kids in the last couple of weeks when they've lost their mojo. I'm like, look, you know, this is where you're at, you know, have a good night's sleep tonight. We'll get back on with your learning or whatever we're doing. And tomorrow we can take this path, you know, and that really stuck with me. And that was a good one. I think the people who have got that positive kind of growth mindset that aren't stuck in their ways, are the ones, and that's most of the people that we've spoken to be honest. I think all of them. That's been one common thread throughout, is that these haven't been people that are like, you know, I think everyone's been paralyzed to a degree for a certain amount of time by it, whether that's a day, whether that's a couple of hours before you kind of bounce back and say, okay, no worries, you know, let's work this out.
I think that's the biggest bit for me, actually, is I think that there's just like the people that seem to be dealing with it really well, the people that are getting a bit of acceptance around it. No, I think like the whole acceptance element, I think is kind of a big piece as well, which is, you know, that you can either sort of wallow in your shit of like the world's changed and, you know, everything's different. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? or you can go, okay, the world's changed, everything's different now. How can I change myself to kind of sit with that? And I think you know, acceptance and control are the two massive things that I've taken out of both of these things. Is that number one, like however can control you think of your life, your career, what type of work you're doing, it can all change overnight, and it can have absolutely nothing to do with you. And I think once you accept that kind of thing, it actually puts you in a much stronger place to kind of make these changes that you need to make, and these kind of, you know, moves and roles. I mean, for us on a personal level, we changed massively with the approach of the things that we were doing in the first few weeks. You know, obviously we were hoping to kick off everything together. Dom got ill and wasn't available, which was shit because, you know, better together. And then there's only two of us on the screen. eventually one of us. But, you know, I think it's the acceptance of doing that and not just giving up on it and actually working through it. And for me on a personal level, I mean, like I've had zero income now for about 3 months, and I could either spend my time flapping around that, or I can say, right, this is the way it is, and what can I do, and get on with that stuff, which I think in itself is quite a therapeutic thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like making the most of what you can do rather than what you can't do is a really important thing, and that's what a lot of people have kind of conveyed to us is just focusing on the positives and focusing on, you know, what you can control and relinquishing some of that stuff that you can't control.
I think that was the biggest difference for me. Like with the Yeti, was like for him. The Yeti. I should call him Alex. Really. It's kind of weird when I call him the Yeti.
Sounds like the Hulk.
I do like it though. It's like a superhero. He loves it. But like we had this funny joke afterwards, and I think it was actually you, John, that kind of came up with this like hashtag be more Yeti, and it was just this like, you know, he
can have that one. I'll sell it to him.
I think he's already using it from all his social media stuff I've been seeing. It's been every single one. Maybe like, we should make him a T-shirt and send it to him. But, he kind of epitomized that sort of thing when having seen him and other people in a similar situation where he kind of was just like, do you know what, I'm just going to do some stuff, and it doesn't matter if it looks stupid, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work, and you know, I can just try all these kind of things. And some of the things that sound crazy, like off the bat, like he's like, oh, I'm going to do kids parties, and then within a day he had a thing up, a post on social media, just like a really simple thing saying, yeah, I'm doing kids parties, and within a week he had 3 of them booked or something like that.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's just
it's a great time for starting new ideas, isn't it? And just seeing what sticks.
Yeah, being given permission to fail, you know, it doesn't really matter, just give it a go, you know.
Yeah.
Not being afraid of doing that, I think, is, you know, brave, and you know, if there's ever a time to do it, it's now, isn't it? You know.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
What have you got to lose, basically?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's interesting. So one of the interesting conversations I had was with John Zeratsky, who's the co-author of Sprint and Make Time. Oh, what's that you say? Here's the books I had earlier.
By the way, if anyone listening, John is definitely not gloating about bagging the special celebrity guest. I mean, we haven't heard much about it, honestly. This is the first. You interviewed who, John?
Oh, he has a great first name, John Zeratsky, and he talks a lot in the book, the Make Time book, about defaults and about the kind of habit forming creatures that we are. And you know, some of the stuff that we spoke about was how, you know, the kind of the scaffolding's been taken away from our world, you know, and we're now in a position where, you know, the concrete's being poured in, and we're in a position where we've kind of got out of our old habits. So we're not getting up, we're not jumping on the train, we're not doing this, we're not doing that like we used to. And suddenly coming out of those habits, and we're in a unique position where we can form new ones. And I don't know about you guys, usually the only other time I can compare to this situation that we're in at the moment is where we take a couple of weeks off for Christmas and everyone's just sort of sat around. And I'm like, I usually come back, and Dom can back me up here. I usually come back from Christmas and I'm like, Dom, I've got some new ideas. I know what we should be doing. You know, I've had loads of time sat around, you know, eating quality, pumped up on Quality Street, and just thinking about all these new ideas, you know, and this in a way has felt like a very long, very weird, slightly anxious Christmas, and we've all had one of those before.
Right. I think we got the episode for the first podcast here, the really long, slightly anxious Christmas edition.
Yes, I will tell you all about it sometime. But yeah, it's interesting, you know, in the way that we've been given this time out, we've been given this break from habits, and we've been given this opportunity to rebuild our habits and rebuild the way that we do things. And his point was, you know, this is a great time to do it right now. And if you don't do it right now, you can do it in the future, and you can always do it, but it becomes way harder when everything does go back to normal, or goes back to as normal as possible. That, you know,
well, it's so easy to just fall into that conformity, isn't it, of like doing the same as everyone else, or what we're almost expected to be doing, and not that in reality isn't always a possibility and doesn't always work. And there's some, you know, I've read a lot about, you know, different ways of working, and there's you know, for us, for instance, obviously trying to kind of implement like a 4-day work week, for instance, again, you know, that's like another thing of...
That felt really hard, didn't it? When, you know, back in the old days when we were like, oh, we're going to do 4 days. How are we going to do this? And now it's just like, I mean, I don't know how many actual days we're doing a week at the moment, but it's...
I don't even know how I did 5 days a week.
I don't even know what, to be honest, I don't even know what day it is, if I'm completely honest.
I feel there was a lot of coffee drinking and website browsing going on, and actually trim that down, and 4 days sounds easy.
Exactly. I'm 100% certain that when we go back to normal, we can definitely do it. If we can find some way of being productive through this, I'm sure we can drop 1 day in a week.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's, you know, whatever happens, I know, you know, we'll always be on it. We'll always get what we need to get done in the time we need to get done. So, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
I think it's different if you're the type of person who needs a bit more structure and who needs, you know, constantly, you know, someone to constantly check in with.
It's a funny one though, isn't it, Dom, from your experience? Because obviously you guys hire in, you know, designers and stuff. Because I find this is really quite interesting, is that I've been guilty of being like having freelancers in the building and wanting them to be in the building so I know they're working, as if in some magical way time in my vision related to value for money.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, before we formed Wolf Cub, the amount of, you know, we're in Brighton, the amount of freelance contracts and opportunities and stuff in London is unreal, and sometimes in Brighton they're quite slim. But you know, lots of big agencies and even small companies up there would be like, no, you can't do that remotely. That's not possible. You have to come and sit in my office in London. So then, therefore, we've got a 4-hour commute to go and put our bums on a seat and do the same, probably less work than we would do if we could just do it from home, or from, you know, remotely from an office. So
yeah,
it's crazy, really.
Trust is a weird thing, isn't it? You know, and a lot of the time, you know, unless you've worked with someone before for a reasonable amount of time, obviously that is an instinctive thing to say, you know, actually I'd rather you be in. But if they can prove to you that they can work, you know, in the same kind of way they do when they're in the office, or better even, then why still make them come in? Unless it's, you know, this whole thing before we all came into lockdown, remote working was starting to become a bigger thing anyway. So many people were doing it. Yeah, you know, a lot of offices and agencies are no longer have this kind of big, you know, 100+, you know, people office. They all work in different countries, and it all seems to work all right. So
exactly. One of the first people that I spoke to outside of the new normal when we kind of went off was from Envision, which is someone that I've been chatting to for a while there, and it was interesting because I had a chat with her, and she was like, because Envision are a massive company. There's like, I don't know how many hundreds of them, maybe even 1,000. I might be blowing that up, but there's a lot of people anyway.
Millions,
and,
millions of people,
millions,
zillions.
They're like gremlins. They're just expanding constantly. Don't feed them after midnight. There you go. 80s film reference.
Oh, you got it in.
Hey, but yeah, she was just like, oh, you know, it's interesting. These people that have been working from home for so long. You know, they're just like, yeah, you know, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll feel normal to you. It's a bit weird at first, but feel normal in a couple of weeks. And I was like, oh no, they're wrong. You know, this can't possibly ever feel normal. But then that just seems to be a ridiculous conversation now, because we're proving to ourselves that we can get on with stuff and we can be trusted to do stuff, and you know, and the world is still turning. Yeah, people are still getting on with stuff, so it can be done.
In between watching the Tiger King, people.
Yes.
Oh god, yeah. Let's talk about the Tiger King. How much time we got left?
I don't know, to be honest.
Have we got enough time to quickly talk about the Tiger King?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so, because you know, everyone needs to be including Joe Exotic in their podcasts.
Just watch the first 2 episodes. Just watch the first 2 episodes, and it's.
Dom, can you give us an intro to why everybody that's listening to this, all 2 of them, should be watching the Tiger King?
Hi, Mum.
Literally, it's just a funny show. Entertainment is definitely top of the list.
It's hard to step away from, isn't it?
It's just addictive, because you've got this sort of kind of like redneck type character who's gay and has 2 lovers, who also live on the zoo. So
he runs a zoo with tigers in it, basically, doesn't he? Lots of big cats.
He has like 280 tigers. He has bears, crocodiles. Literally has everything. He doesn't have enough food to feed them, which is amazing. So he gets all this food delivered from, I think they're kind of scraps from like the local burger joint or something. One episode that was really funny actually was that he threw this like big dinner for everyone who came to the zoo, like all the visitors and stuff like that. And he made his homemade pizzas, and on every single pizza there was meat that was basically being given for scraps for the tigers.
Oh, nice.
I was just like, amazing.
Class act.
I've watched a couple of episodes.
Matt, you need to carry on.
I know. Unfortunately, I was just like, my day is pretty much like from 6 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock during the day, running around after small children and watching Disney films.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to keep myself like doing something reasonably adult in the evenings, but actually Tiger, I feel like I'm missing out and I should watch the rest of these. I find it hard. I have to say that I also find it hard because my dad is like a redneck in Georgia, like my biological father. So it's quite close to home at some points. If you're listening, sorry to even take you there.
You are the Tiger King, Matt.
I'm the Tiger Prince.
Unleash.
And on that bombshell, unleash the Tiger Prince.
Nice. I like it. No, it's an interesting point actually, because up until the last week, I hadn't really been like relaxing that much. I've been kind of like you say, you know, kind of busy during the day, trying to carry on working, and when I'm not working, trying to look after kids and that sort of thing. And
I think just this is one thing that's so important right now, is to just remember that, you know, you do have to still have a break and take that time out. You know, I think there's this thing now where everyone feels like they're constantly switched on.
There's no divide, is there?
Well, yeah, it's like, oh, you know, your boss is contacting you at God knows what time because they want something done. It's like, look, you know, just because I'm at home and you know I've not gone anywhere, that doesn't mean that suddenly my time is now your time.
I think he's talking about you, John.
Is he talking about me?
I think he's talking about you. I think this is subtle. I feel like I should back away from this a little bit now. It's almost like I've
He just called me the boss, I think. I think he just called me the boss. So my boss keeps messaging me anytime, day or night, because I'm at home. I'm just making sure you're working.
Don't listen to him.
Officially the boss.
But
it's interesting.
It's important people take that time out. You know, I'm not saying sit and watch Netflix, but even just getting away from a screen, you know.
Yeah, that's something.
That's the hardest.
Something that I spoke to John about, John Zeratsky.
Such a name dropper. Such a name dropper. I was just like, oh, when I was speaking to Bill from Microsoft.
I'm joking. But we were talking about
where they come, where they work.
When I was speaking to Matt from PAC.
He was talking about we were talking about getting away from devices basically, and I was talking to him about the fact that every interaction we have outside of talking to your partner or your kids or whatever, your immediate family at home, is all done through screens, isn't it? And how how important it is to step away from some of that stuff. And I don't know about you, but early days in this, you know, I was checking the news every day. What's the latest on the virus? What's this? What's that? You know, but actually, I think it's really important to take some of those, you know, and checking on social media as well, and just basically like limiting yourself, like putting the offensive on, like, right, you know, in order for me not to get sucked into that stuff, in order for me to stay off screens, you know, I'm going to take those apps off my phone. I'm going to lock down these channels, and I'm going to limit myself to what I can consume. And then, so now, you know, we're chatting about, you know, being habitual creatures. The amount of times that I would just grab my phone and just be like, oh, you know, give me a bit of input, you know, give me a nugget of information, give me this, give me that. So it's really breaking those habits and putting up those barriers now. And when you don't have to be on a screen, try and get away from it and do something different. I've had a real urge to just go full on, you know, away from tech recently as much as possible. Just go out and live in the woods or something, you know, just embrace it.
Is that where we're going to find you?
Yeah. Here I am in the woods.
I'm live from the woods.
Speaking to you through a badger phone.
Covered in poo with like eating berries and stuff. It's going to be amazing.
That's the dream.
I can't wait for that.
I've had a full-on lockdown reaction. Run for the hills. Yeah,
if
basically
that's what episode 2 is, I'm there.
That's episode 2.
That's this episode.
The recovery.
I'm in the woods right now. Yeah, so yeah, don't be afraid to step away from technology and just embrace that time away as well, as much as you can. I think it's really important. Yeah, so it's been great. I just wanted to take a second as well, just to thank everyone that's been on the series of the new normal, and obviously, you know, the podcast isn't just going to be about that. You know, we're going to start talking about other subjects, but it's been a really fantastic way to create some content and meet some lovely people along the way as well. It's been really fun.
Definitely. This is and tune in next week for John's favourite 80s films, Dom's favourite books, and Matt's nightmares of parenting.
Yes. And an update on Matt's church quiz.
Yeah. Maybe you should.
Is the 90-year-old still alive?
Grab 3 of the top questions, and maybe we could go through them next week.
Yeah. Absolutely,
I will do. There were some gems in there.
Sounds good. So where can people watch some of these wonderful, highly produced, cutting-edge videos that we've been making?
John, I'm really glad you asked that question. Anybody that would like to check out the new normal series on our newly launched Ride with the Pack website needs to go to www.ridewiththepack.com/the new normal with hyphens in between the words, just to make that extra clear.
Brilliant. No, all of the videos are there. You can watch them all again.
Why should people subscribe, Dom? Why should people subscribe
to Pack Unleashed?
The podcast?
Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't obvious enough already, I mean, you know, it's already been, 45 minutes now, and it's just been pure gold, isn't it?
Absolute magic.
And there's more to come. As Matt said, we've got 80s stuff, you know, 80s films. Remember those? I actually did an 80s round of a quiz on Saturday.
Oh, nice.
I was hoping most people would just get stuff quite quickly, but
it was just you.
You didn't invite me.
They didn't. It was just me. It was. No, I didn't invite you because I knew you'd know all the answers. So
he's banned.
As well, just to let people know, the podcast will be bi-weekly. So you can tune in every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. And what days are going to be released, Dom?
It's going to be released on a Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. So you could say,
see you next Tuesday.
Oh, I got it out. See you next Tuesday, guys.
So thank you for listening. As Dom said, every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, tune in, please subscribe and tell your friends. It's going to be epic. Let's do this.